Imagine walking into a room where everyone is speaking, reacting, defending themselves, trying to prove they are right. The loudest voices often appear the strongest, the quickest responses seem the smartest, and the most emotional reactions attract the most attention. But if you were to observe that room through Machiavelli's eyes, you would notice something entirely different. You would see people revealing themselves. Every emotional reaction is information. Every impulsive decision is a clue. Every unnecessary word exposes a weakness. While most people believe power comes from action, strategy begins with observation. This is the first lesson that separates the ordinary mind from the strategic one. Most people do not think. They react. They allow circumstances to dictate their emotions, and those emotions dictate their decisions. They mistake movement for progress and passion for wisdom, yet history consistently rewards those who remain composed while everyone else loses control. Think about the greatest military commanders, political leaders, and negotiators throughout history. Their greatest advantage was rarely physical strength or overwhelming resources. It was their ability to stay calm while everyone else became emotional. They understood that emotions narrow perception. Anger makes you reckless, fear makes you obedient, pride makes you predictable, desperation makes you manipulable. Once someone controls your emotions, they no longer need to control you. You begin making decisions for them. Machiavelli understood this truth centuries ago. Human nature has changed very little. Technology evolves, society changes, cultures rise and fall, but people still crave approval, fear rejection, protect their ego, and seek immediate gratification. Because of this, they become astonishingly predictable. The person who insults you may not be trying to hurt your feelings. They may simply be trying to make you lose your discipline. The person who praises you excessively may not admire you. They may want something from you. The person who pressures you to decide immediately often benefits more from your haste than your wisdom. Notice how often people regret decisions made in moments of intense emotion. Few regret waiting one more day before responding. Few regret remaining silent during an argument. Yet countless people regret angry messages, impulsive purchases, broken relationships, and opportunities destroyed by impatience. Emotional reactions create temporary relief, but often produce permanent consequences. The strategic thinker understands that every emotional impulse is an invitation to pause. That pause is where power begins. Between what happens and how you respond exists a small space. Most people never notice it because they react automatically. But if you learn to expand that space, even by a few seconds, your entire life begins to change. Instead of becoming a prisoner of circumstances, you become the architect of your decisions. This is why silence has always been associated with strength. Silence is uncomfortable for people who rely on emotional reactions. They rush to fill empty space, they explain themselves, they defend every criticism, they reveal their intentions before they have even formed a complete plan. In doing so, they hand others valuable information. Observe skilled negotiators, they rarely rush to answer. Observe experienced investigators. They often allow silence to encourage others to speak more than intended. Observe successful entrepreneurs. They spend more time asking questions than making declarations. The person who gathers information always possesses an advantage over the person who constantly gives it away. Many people mistakenly believe strategy means manipulation. It does not. Strategy simply means understanding consequences before taking action. A chess master is not manipulating the pieces. He simply sees 5 moves ahead, while his opponent sees only 1. In life, the same principle applies. Before speaking, ask yourself what your words will produce. Before reacting, ask yourself who benefits from your reaction. Before making a decision, ask yourself whether you are acting from reason or emotion. One of the greatest traps in modern life is the pressure to respond instantly. Social media rewards outrage, news cycles reward emotional reactions, conversations often reward whoever speaks first rather than whoever thinks best. We are conditioned to believe speed equals intelligence. In reality, wisdom often moves slowly. The strongest mind is not the fastest to react, it is the hardest to provoke. Consider the individuals who quietly build extraordinary lives. They rarely announce every goal. They do not waste energy arguing with strangers or trying to win every debate. They understand that attention is a limited resource. Every unnecessary conflict steals time from meaningful progress. While others are busy proving themselves, they are quietly improving themselves. This requires discipline because your ego constantly demands immediate satisfaction. It wants revenge when insulted. It wants recognition when ignored. It wants validation when uncertain. But your ego is a poor strategist. It focuses on winning today's battle while sacrificing tomorrow's opportunities. Strategic thinking asks a different question. Instead of asking, "How do I feel right now?" it asks, "What outcome do I truly want?" That single question transforms everything. Suddenly, criticism becomes information instead of an attack. Delays become opportunities to prepare rather than reasons to panic. Failure becomes feedback rather than proof of inadequacy. Even difficult people become teachers because they reveal where your emotional discipline still needs strengthening. Remember that the people who appear impossible to manipulate are rarely the smartest in the room. They are simply the most emotionally disciplined. They cannot be baited into unnecessary conflict. They cannot be rushed into poor decisions. They cannot be distracted by every opinion directed toward them. Their calmness creates uncertainty in others because predictable people depend on predictable reactions. As you move through life, begin practicing this discipline in small moments. The next time someone provokes you, resist the urge to answer immediately. The next time you receive exciting news, avoid making promises before thinking them through. The next time anger rises inside you, observe it instead of obeying it. Every moment of restraint strengthens your ability to think strategically instead of emotionally. Eventually, this becomes more than a habit. It becomes your identity. People begin to notice that you are difficult to read, difficult to pressure, and impossible to control. They may not understand why, but they will feel it. Calmness has a presence that noise can never imitate. It communicates confidence without words and authority without force. And perhaps that is Machiavelli's greatest lesson. The person who masters their emotions never has to chase power, because real power quietly follows those who first learn to govern themselves. Once you learn to control your own emotions, something remarkable begins to happen. Your attention is no longer consumed by your inner reactions, and for the first time, you can truly observe the people around you. This is where strategic thinking reaches a higher level. Outsmarting people is not about having a higher IQ or always winning arguments. It is about understanding human nature more deeply than most people ever will. The person who understands people does not need to force outcomes. They simply anticipate them. One of Machiavelli's most enduring insights is that people rarely reveal who they are through their words. They reveal themselves through patterns. Anyone can make promises. Anyone can sound honest, loyal, or confident for a few minutes. But maintaining a false image over weeks, months, and years is far more difficult. Eventually, behavior exposes character. That is why the strategic observer pays less attention to what people say and far more attention to what they repeatedly do. This is one of the greatest mistakes people make in relationships, business, and everyday life. They become captivated by appearances. They believe confidence equals competence. They assume kindness always means sincerity. They mistake charm for integrity and charisma for wisdom. Yet appearances are often carefully designed performances. Human beings naturally present the version of themselves they believe others want to see. There is nothing unusual about this. It is part of social survival. The mistake is believing the performance without questioning what exists beneath it. The strategic mind develops a different habit. Instead of asking, "What is this person saying?" it quietly asks, "What motivates them to say it?" That single question changes everything. Every action has an incentive behind it. Every decision serves a purpose, even if the individual making it is not fully aware of that purpose. Some people seek status, others seek security, some crave admiration, others fear abandonment, some pursue power openly, while others pursue it through sympathy, guilt, or dependence. The method changes, but the underlying motivations remain surprisingly consistent. If you begin paying attention to incentives instead of personalities, people become much easier to understand. Imagine watching two colleagues compete for the same promotion. One constantly compliments the manager while criticizing co-workers behind their backs. The other quietly develops new skills without seeking attention. Both claim they simply want success, yet their behavior reveals entirely different motivations. Words create stories, actions reveal priorities. Most manipulation succeeds because people listen emotionally instead of observing objectively. They hear compliments and assume friendship. They hear criticism and assume hatred. They hear confidence and assume competence. But experienced strategists know that emotions cloud perception. They ask themselves what the other person gains from the interaction. They examine consistency instead of isolated moments. This does not mean becoming cynical. It means becoming observant. There is a profound difference. Cynicism assumes everyone has bad intentions. Observation simply accepts that everyone has interests. Even good people make decisions based on their own needs, fears, and desires. Understanding this does not make you distrustful. It makes you realistic. Another principle worth remembering is that pressure reveals character more clearly than comfort ever can. When life is easy, almost anyone can appear patient, generous, and composed. Real personality emerges during setbacks, criticism, competition, or uncertainty. Watch how someone reacts when they lose. Watch how they treat people who cannot benefit them. Watch how they behave when no one is watching. Those moments provide more information than 100 polished conversations. Patterns are impossible to fake forever. Someone who repeatedly avoids responsibility will eventually blame others. Someone who constantly seeks validation will eventually reveal insecurity beneath their confidence. Someone driven by envy will eventually celebrate your failures more enthusiastically than your successes. Human nature leaves traces everywhere for those willing to pay attention. Most people miss these signals because they are too busy projecting their own assumptions. They believe others think exactly as they do. Psychologists often refer to this tendency as projection. Honest people assume honesty, loyal people assume loyalty, manipulative people assume manipulation. We naturally use ourselves as the standard for judging everyone else. Unfortunately, reality rarely works that way. Strategic thinkers resist this temptation. They understand that every individual operates from a unique combination of experiences, ambitions, fears, and desires. Rather than assuming, they observe. Rather than judging quickly, they collect evidence. This patience protects them from unnecessary disappointment. because they allow reality to reveal itself instead of forcing reality to match their expectations. There is another subtle advantage to observing more than speaking. When people feel heard, they naturally reveal more about themselves. They disclose frustrations, ambitions, insecurities, and dreams without realizing how much information they are providing. Meanwhile, the person asking thoughtful questions remains difficult to read. This imbalance creates an enormous strategic advantage. Information flows in one direction. Consider how often people sabotage themselves simply because silence makes them uncomfortable. They overshare personal plans before achieving them. They reveal financial concerns, relationship problems, workplace frustrations, and future ambitions to people who have not earned that level of trust. Every unnecessary disclosure gives others the ability to predict, influence, or even exploit their decisions. The wisest individuals understand that knowledge has value, especially knowledge about yourself. They do not hide because they are fearful. They simply recognize that mystery preserves freedom. The less people know about your emotional triggers, your long-term plans, and your deepest insecurities, the fewer opportunities they have to manipulate your decisions. This also applies to reading groups, not just individuals. Crowds are often driven by emotion more than logic. Public opinion changes rapidly because people unconsciously follow one another. Machiavelli understood that popularity is temporary, but human nature is remarkably stable. If you understand fear, ambition, pride, insecurity, and hope, you can often predict collective behavior long before others recognize the pattern. As you continue developing this skill, you will notice something surprising. People begin telling you exactly who they are, not through grand confessions, but through small, repeated choices. The challenge is not finding the truth. The challenge is having the discipline to believe what those patterns consistently reveal instead of clinging to comforting illusions. When you stop judging people by appearances and start judging them by incentives, consistency, and behavior under pressure, you gain an advantage that few ever develop. You stop being surprised by betrayal, manipulation, or hidden agendas because you recognize the signs long before they become obvious. Instead of reacting to people, you begin understanding them. And understanding is always more powerful than assumption. By this point, you have learned two lessons that fundamentally change the way you move through the world. First, you discovered that the majority of people surrender their power the moment they allow emotion to dictate their actions. Second, you saw that understanding human nature requires looking beyond words and paying attention to patterns, incentives, and behavior. But there is one final lesson that ties everything together. It is the lesson that transforms strategy from something you understand into something you embody. It is the art of building quiet power. Most people misunderstand what power looks like. They imagine it as dominance, loud confidence, endless talking, or constantly proving themselves. They believe powerful people are those who command attention wherever they go, but history tells a different story. Again and again, the individuals who shaped nations, built empires, led revolutions, or transformed industries were often underestimated in the beginning. They understood a timeless truth. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to control. There is a strange obsession in modern society with visibility. People feel compelled to announce every goal before they have taken the first step. They share every opinion, every achievement, every frustration, and every plan. Social platforms encourage constant exposure, making people believe that attention is the same as influence. Yet attention and influence are not the same thing. Attention is temporary, influence is lasting. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty creates caution. When people know exactly what you are thinking, exactly what you intend to do, and exactly how you will respond. They no longer need to respect your strategy. They simply calculate your next move, but when your actions are measured, your emotions remain controlled, and your intentions are revealed only when necessary, people become uncertain. That uncertainty commands respect because it cannot easily be manipulated. This does not mean becoming deceptive or dishonest. It means becoming disciplined. There is a profound difference between secrecy born from fear and restraint born from wisdom. Fear hides because it is weak. Wisdom speaks only when words create value. Think about the strongest people you have ever met. Chances are they did not spend their time convincing everyone of their intelligence. They did not constantly seek approval or validation. They listened more than they spoke. They carried themselves with quiet confidence because they understood that genuine competence does not require constant advertisement. One of the greatest strategic mistakes people make is explaining themselves too much. Every criticism becomes an argument they feel obligated to answer. Every misunderstanding becomes a battle they feel compelled to correct. Every rumor becomes an emergency that demands a response. Before long, they are living their lives according to other people's expectations rather than their own principles. The strategic thinker recognizes that not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Sometimes silence is stronger than explanation, because silence demonstrates confidence in your own direction. The more secure you become internally, the less dependent you are on external approval. Another principle of quiet power is becoming intentionally unpredictable, not in your values, but in your methods. Your principles should remain consistent, but your actions should never become so repetitive that others can exploit them. Predictability is comfortable, yet it often becomes a vulnerability. Imagine playing chess against someone who always begins with the same opening, always attacks in the same pattern, and always reacts emotionally when pressured. Eventually, defeating them becomes easy. Life operates in much the same way. If people always know how to provoke you, flatter you, intimidate you, or distract you, they gain influence over your decisions. The solution is not becoming chaotic, it is becoming adaptable. Adaptability is one of the highest forms of intelligence because it allows you to respond to changing circumstances without abandoning your principles. Water does not fight every obstacle, it simply finds another path. Quiet power operates in the same manner. It remains flexible without becoming weak. This requires tremendous patience. Most individuals chase immediate victories. They want instant recognition, instant revenge, instant success. But strategic people think in years rather than moments. They willingly sacrifice short-term satisfaction for long-term advantage. History consistently rewards those capable of delayed gratification. Great businesses are rarely built overnight. Strong reputations develop through years of consistent behavior. Trust is earned gradually and destroyed instantly. Likewise, meaningful influence grows quietly before becoming visible to everyone else. That is why disciplined people often appear unnoticed in the beginning. While others chase applause, they develop competence. While others compete for attention, they build character. While others seek shortcuts, they master fundamentals. Eventually, the results become impossible to ignore. Success that arrives slowly tends to remain longer because it is supported by substance rather than appearance. Perhaps the greatest form of quiet power is learning to protect your future from your present emotions. Every decision should be measured against the person you wish to become. Ask yourself, will this action strengthen my reputation or weaken it? Will these words create opportunities or close doors? Am I responding to this situation or merely reacting to my feelings? Those questions create distance between impulse and action. Within that distance lies maturity, and maturity is one of the rarest forms of strength in a world addicted to instant reaction. As you continue applying these ideas, something subtle begins to change. You stop needing to win every argument because your confidence no longer depends on being right. You stop seeking constant recognition because your purpose becomes greater than public approval. You stop fearing what others think because your actions become guided by principles rather than popularity. Ironically, this is when people begin noticing you the most. They notice your calmness in situations that make others panic. They notice your discipline when everyone else becomes distracted. They notice your consistency when others constantly change direction. They may not understand why they respect you, but they will feel the difference. Quiet power speaks through actions long before it speaks through words. Remember, Machiavelli was not simply teaching political strategy. At its deepest level, he was teaching mastery of reality. Reality rewards those who understand timing, discipline, perception, and human nature. It does not reward those who merely appear impressive for a moment. So, as you leave this conversation, resist the temptation to prove yourself to everyone. Instead, invest in becoming someone whose actions make explanations unnecessary. Build your skills in silence. Strengthen your character when no one is watching. Let patience become your greatest weapon, discipline your strongest ally, and wisdom your constant guide. Because the greatest strategists never waste energy trying to look powerful. They become so disciplined, so composed, and so effective that power naturally begins to follow them.